Hi, my name is Kalila. My parents said I was unfit because I refused to fund my sister's endless schemes. They didn't just turn their backs on me, they tried to erase me from my own life. They froze my accounts, forged my signature, even dragged me to court. But what hurt worse wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing I had been fighting a battle I didn't even know I was in. How did I go from being the family outcast to owning the entire family business? The smell of burnt espresso clung to the air as I slid into the booth across from Delaney. She barely looked up, her acrylic nails tapping at her phone. Outside, Charlotte buzzed with spring energy, but inside the polished cafe, everything felt fake, like a bad play where I already knew my lines. Delaney finally glanced up, flashing a tight, almost mocking smile. "Kalila?" she said, stretching my name into something sharp. "You're looking responsible." I didn't rise to it. "What do you want, Delaney?" "I don't have a lot of time." She sighed theatrically and leaned in, lowering her voice like she was about to reveal a secret. "I'm starting a new wellness brand. Candles, oils, everything luxury. I need you to invest. Family helping family, right?" I stared at her, biting down the laugh rising in my throat. "How much?" She smiled like she'd already won. "Just 100 grand to start. Nothing to someone like you." The words hit harder than she knew. Nothing to someone who worked through college, climbed to CFO at Hayes Interiors, while she coasted on our parents' guilt and burned through every opportunity. Delaney must have seen my jaw tighten. She leaned back, smirking. "Come on, sis. You owe us. Mom and Dad sacrificed for you." The same tired guilt trip. I kept my voice level. "No, Delaney, I'm not funding another one of your projects." Her eyes widened in fake outrage. "Unbelievable! You think you're better than us now?" I pushed aside my untouched coffee. "No, I'm just done being your safety net." The air thickened. For a second, I thought she might lunge across the table. Instead, she shoved her chair back with a screech, drawing stares. "You're pathetic," she spat, loud enough for the whole cafe to hear. I watched her storm out, the doorbell jangling behind her. The eavesdroppers buried themselves in their phones again. I sat for a moment longer, breathing in the tension she left behind. Part of me still wanted to believe in family, the smiling holiday cards, the Sunday dinners. But as Delaney disappeared into the busy Charlotte streets, that fantasy cracked for good. Maybe it should have broken long ago. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. Either way, as I stepped out into the sun, one thing was clear. The real storm wasn't out here. It was waiting back home. The days after the cafe blowout crawled by. I buried myself in quarterly reports and renovation plans at Hayes Interiors, pretending Delaney's meltdown hadn't shaken something loose. But I knew the real fight was still coming. It arrived on a Wednesday evening, just as the sun dipped behind the city skyline. Family meeting. Tonight. No excuses. No signature needed. I could hear Marjorie Hayes's voice as clearly as if she were standing next to me. Reluctantly, I drove to the colonial house north of downtown Charlotte. Everything looked the same, the polished brass knocker, the military-precise flower beds, but inside, something had changed. I wasn't the kid dreading lectures anymore. I was a woman stepping into enemy territory. The living room smelled like cinnamon potpourri and resentment. Marjorie sat stiff-backed in her armchair, lips pursed. Lyle, my father, nursed a scotch, carefully not meeting my eyes. Delaney sprawled on the love seat, arms crossed, lip jutting like a scolded teenager. "Sit," Marjorie ordered, snapping her fingers like I was a dog. I didn't move right away. Then I took the farthest spot on the couch. Marjorie smoothed her skirt, already mid-performance. "This family is built on loyalty, sacrifice. We help each other." She layered guilt like bricks, each word heavier than the last. "Your sister is trying to build something real. She's asking for support, not charity. And you," her voice sharpened, "are spitting on everything we taught you." Delaney tossed her hair dramatically. "Some people forget where they came from." I looked at Lyle, searching for anything. Reason, backbone, but he just stared into his drink. Marjorie pressed on. "You owe this family. Without us, you wouldn't be where you are. We invested everything into you, time, money, love. And now you're too good to give back?" The room thickened with accusations. I kept still, heart pounding, until my voice finally cut through. I'm grateful for what I learned here, I said, sharp and cold. But I don't fund irresponsibility. Not now. Not ever. Silence. Delaney gasped. Marjorie's eyes narrowed. You think you're better than us? She spat. I'm tired of being used, I said, standing. You'll regret this, Marjorie hissed. Blood is blood. I met her glare, remembering the woman who once sang me lullabies and who now wielded guilt like a weapon. Maybe, I said, but I'd rather stand alone with dignity than stay chained to you. Delaney burst into theatrical tears. Lyle finally set his glass down with a dull thud. I left without another word. The front door slammed behind me, final and loud. As I pulled out of the driveway, I knew. The thread binding us wasn't fraying anymore. It had snapped clean. The streetlights blurred into gold streaks as I sped down familiar roads, the night swallowing the echo of the slammed door. My hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, the leather biting into my palms. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't need more noise. My memories were loud enough. Near Briarwood Park, the dam inside me cracked. It started small, scraps of old conversations, flashes of forgotten sacrifices. I saw myself at 17, working prom night at the diner so Delaney could have another dance costume. I remembered Marjorie's laugh when I asked if anyone would help with college prep classes. You're smart enough. Figure it out, she had said. And I had. Alone. The pattern had been there all along, stitched into every Thanksgiving smile, every backhanded compliment dressed up as advice. Don't get too full of yourself, Kalila. Family first, Kalila. Be grateful we're here to catch you. But they weren't catching me. They were holding me down. Rain started as I hit the main intersection, fat drops hammering the windshield. I flicked the wipers on, but my vision blurred anyway. It wasn't the rain. Before I realized it, I pulled into Briarwood Park's empty lot. The weak lamplight spilled across silent swings and empty courts. I killed the engine, but left the headlights burning, staring out at nothing. Maybe I had been the fool. Maybe loyalty had been the leash disguised as love. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. It sat heavy in my lap, a symbol of every conversation I had swallowed, every humiliation I had endured to keep the peace. I opened the family group chat, the same thread full of fake smiles and obligatory plans, and typed, I will not be attending future family financial discussions. My answer will remain no. Please respect my decision. My thumb hovered for a breath. Then I hit send. The message floated there, delivered but unread. I powered off the phone before their reactions could reach me. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the blow. I wasn't bracing for guilt. I had said no, and this time, it was final. The rain drummed harder against the car roof. I leaned back, staring at the gray sky, and whispered to no one, no matter what they do next, I'm done playing their game. I didn't hear the first crack of thunder roll across the horizon, but I felt it deep in my chest, a warning and a promise. The storm outside faded to a gray drizzle by morning, but inside me it only thickened. I stuck to my routines, early runs through Charlotte's quiet streets, long hours at Hayes Interiors, endless reports and meetings. On the surface, everything looked normal. Underneath, every second felt like waiting for the ground to drop. 3 days passed, then 4. Just when I started to think maybe they'd let it go, the first strike landed. It was Thursday, just after noon. I was at my desk, checking figures for an upcoming board meeting, when the receptionist poked her head in, smile strained. Kalila, there's someone here to see you. I frowned. I don't have any meetings scheduled. She stepped aside, and a man in a cheap suit with slicked back hair strode in, holding a manila envelope like a prize. Miss Hayes? He asked, fake polite. Yes, I said, standing. You've been served. He slapped the envelope on my desk and left without another word. For a long moment I just stared at it, heart hammering. Then, mechanically, I opened it. Petition for conservatorship. Claim, mental incompetence, financial irresponsibility. I sank into my chair. The words blurred, then sharpened, every syllable a punch. They were trying to take my life from me, because I said no, because I refused to bankroll their failures anymore. The papers trembled in my hands, but I wasn't shaking, not anymore. Past the shock, Anger burned clean and sharp. Whispers floated outside my office. I could feel the stares, the curiosity. I gathered the papers, shoved them into my bag, and stood. No show, no breakdown. I walked calmly down the hall, found an empty conference room, locked the door, and sat heavily in a chair. Only then did I let myself feel it. The betrayal, the humiliation, the sheer absurdity. My family sitting around a table somewhere, deciding it was easier to steal my autonomy than admit their failures. I pulled out my phone, hands steady, and fired off a message to the only person who would understand. Ruth. I need legal help, now. No emojis, no explanation. Ruth had been a shark in court since before she was 30. If anyone could help me turn this around, it was her. Outside, the afternoon sun dipped low, shadows stretching across the office. Somewhere deep inside me, a strange calm settled. They had drawn first blood, but they had no idea what kind of war they had just started. By the time I left the office that evening, the sky had already faded to a deep indigo, the city lights blinking on one by one like cautious promises. I didn't go home. I didn't even think about it. I drove straight to Ruth's office, an unassuming brick building tucked between a bakery and a law library in uptown Charlotte. She was waiting for me, sitting behind a desk littered with legal pads, files, and 2 empty coffee cups. When I walked in, she didn't bother with small talk. "Show me everything," she said, flipping open a fresh notebook. I sat down heavily and pulled out a folder I had assembled over the years, without even realizing why. Pristine tax records, spotless credit reports, medical histories free of any diagnoses they might try to weaponize. Ruth flipped through them methodically, her mouth tightening with every page. Finally, she looked up. "They're going to have a hard time making anything stick," she said. "But we need to do more than defend. We need to attack." Her words steadied something inside me. I'm ready. The next morning, I called Tobias, my friend since college and now my financial advisor. If anyone knew where the skeletons were buried, it was him. We met over coffee at a quiet spot near the courthouse. I slid the petition across the table. His eyebrows shot up. "They're out of their minds," he muttered, thumbing through it. "But if they want to talk about financial irresponsibility..." He pulled out his laptop, tapping quickly. Within an hour, we had the beginnings of a roadmap. Unauthorized transactions, personal charges buried inside Hayes Interior's operating expenses, plane tickets to Miami labeled client outreach, 5-star hotel bills during training weekends, designer handbags bought under business gifts, and Delaney's name attached to almost every single one. "You think the board knows about this?" Tobias asked. I shook my head. "Doubt it. She's always been good at playing the golden child card," he smirked. "Well, it's time someone flips the table." By late afternoon, I was back at Ruth's office, sitting across from her as she scrolled through the compiled evidence. She leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen against her bottom lip. "This doesn't just protect you," she said. "It obliterates their credibility. We file this the minute they try to bring you to court." A grim smile tugged at my mouth. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was going on the offensive. I looked down at the stack of documents we'd gathered. Proof of Delaney's theft, Marjorie's complicity, the paper trail they had thought would stay buried. "They wanted a fight," I said, voice low but certain. "Now they have one." I barely slept that night. Plans churned in my mind, every move and countermove playing out like a war game. When I finally drifted into a shallow sleep, the dawn was already creeping through my bedroom blinds. The shrill ring of my phone dragged me awake. I groggily reached for it, expecting a text from Ruth or maybe Tobias. Instead, it was my banking app flashing furious red alerts across the screen. Account access restricted, funds unavailable. My heart dropped into my stomach. I scrambled out of bed, heart pounding, and called the customer service line. A bored voice on the other end explained that an emergency financial hold had been placed, at the request of my guardian, citing concerns about my mental stability. Marjorie. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, knuckles white. They had frozen my accounts, my emergency savings, my checking account, even my modest little retirement fund. "You have got to be kidding me," I muttered. But they weren't kidding. They were escalating. Before I could even process it, my second phone buzzed. Tobias again. I answered immediately. You need to sit down, he said, no preamble. It's worse than you think. There was a beat of static before he continued. Delaney submitted a loan application this morning. She forged your signature, Kalila. She's trying to take out a $250,000 loan against your condo. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? How? He explained. A sloppily faked document, rushed through a small local bank, likely too hungry for business to double-check signatures. It won't hold up under scrutiny, Tobias said. But if it gets processed before we intervene, you're liable. I hung up without saying goodbye and immediately dialed Ruth. She picked up after one ring. I'm guessing you saw the freeze. And the forgery, I said flatly. Good, she replied briskly. Then you know it's time to burn it all down. Within the hour, I was at her office again, sitting in front of a camera. Ruth coached me through recording a detailed video testimony outlining every hostile move my family had made, time-stamped and notarized. Insurance. In case things got even uglier, we filed an emergency fraud report with the authorities. Ruth drafted a blistering cease and desist letter addressed to both Marjorie and Delaney. It wasn't just a warning. It was the first cannon shot of a war I hadn't started, but one I damn sure intended to finish. As I read through the cease and desist one last time, I smiled grimly at the final line Ruth had written. You wanted a battle. Prepare for war. The cease and desist letter had barely landed when the next twist hit. 2 days later, a new email pinged my inbox. No subject, no signature, just, meet me, 6 p.m., Peggy's Diner, come alone. Attached was a number I didn't recognize, but something about it gnawed at me. I showed Ruth. She raised an eyebrow and nodded. Go, carefully, take notes. We need every advantage. Peggy's was a rundown diner tucked in a forgotten corner of uptown Charlotte. All cracked vinyl booths and burnt coffee. She was already there, Nadine, Delaney's old best friend. Once inseparable, now clearly estranged. Nadine looked rough, hoodie, no makeup, scanning the room like she expected to be followed. When she spotted me, she waved me over with a trembling hand. You don't owe me anything, she said, voice low. But I can't stay quiet anymore. She slid a battered phone across the table. Recordings, Delaney bragging about borrowing from the accounts, screenshots. Your mom helped her cover it up. I scrolled through the files, my stomach twisting tighter with every swipe. It wasn't just theft, it was calculated, coordinated. Worse, they joked about how easy it was to fool Kalila the martyr into funding their messes. Nadine leaned back, exhaling shakily. I thought if I stayed quiet, they'd leave me alone. But after what they did to you, no way. My throat burned. Thank you, I managed. She gave a sad smile. Don't thank me yet, they're not done. That night, fueled by rage and grim determination, I met Ruth and Tobias in the back office. We pulled every old company file we could find, and we found it. Buried deep in dusty records, a falsified amendment to the Hayes Family Trust. My name scratched out, Delaney's written in. This hadn't been impulsive. It hadn't been desperate. It was calculated, planned for years. Marjorie hadn't just tried to control me, she had tried to erase me. Ruth closed the file with a soft, deadly thud. We don't just have a defense, she said. We have a bomb. I sat back, heart pounding against my ribs. It ends now. Later, as Nadine handed over the last of the evidence, I met her eyes across the table. They taught me loyalty, I said quietly. You taught me survival. She blinked hard, then nodded. The courtroom wasn't just going to be a battleground anymore. It was going to be a reckoning. Morning broke heavy and gray the day we stepped into court. Fitting, like the sky itself was holding its breath. Ruth, Tobias, and I moved through the courthouse corridors with quiet, lethal focus. No chatter, no nerves. We carried dynamite. Inside the courtroom, the tension buzzed. Every seat was filled, former business partners, curious onlookers, a few reporters scribbling notes. Marjorie sat at the petitioner's table, regal in a crisp navy suit. Delaney perched beside her, all fake innocence and twitchy hands. They wore the same smugness I'd seen at countless family dinners, the certainty they would always come out on top. Not today. When the judge called us forward, Ruth rose like a general. Her voice was cool, devastating. First came the recordings, Delaney bragging about siphoning company money, Marjorie coaching her in the background. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Next, the paper trail. Credit card statements, falsified signatures, bank transfers hidden as family expenses. When Ruth unveiled the altered trust documents, with Marjorie's handwriting layered over mine, the courtroom's tension snapped. Delaney fidgeted, dabbing fake tears. Marjorie's mask cracked. She crossed her arms so tightly it looked painful. But Ruth wasn't done. She signaled the bailiff to bring forward one final file. I knew what it was before he even placed it on the bench. The DNA test. Ruth's voice stayed steady. The man on my birth certificate, Lyle Hayes, was not my biological father. Legally, no familial claim, no guardianship rights. Silence swallowed the room. Marjorie opened and closed her mouth like a fish gasping for air. Delaney froze mid-sob. The judge flipped slowly through the evidence, then cleared his throat. Given the overwhelming documentation of fraud, deception, and now conclusive biological evidence, he said, voice sharp as a blade, the petition for conservatorship is denied, entirely without merit. He paused. And I am recommending immediate referral of these matters for criminal investigation. The gavel came down, final and loud. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just breathed, truly breathed, for the first time in years. As Ruth packed our files, I caught Marjorie's gaze. She looked small. Not the towering figure of judgment she'd once been, just a bitter woman clinging to a crumbling lie. Delaney wouldn't even meet my eyes. Good. I turned and walked out of that courtroom, shedding the weight I'd carried my whole life. Winning felt like breathing after drowning. Healing would be another battle. The first Monday after the trial, I walked into Hayes Interiors. Not as the girl they whispered about, but as the woman signing their paychecks. Sunlight spilled through the tall executive suite windows, painting golden stripes across the floor. I stood at the doorway for a moment, breathing it in. Not fear, not shame, possibility. Marjorie's resignation came 2 days after the courtroom reckoning. No apology, just a terse legal notice surrendering her stake. Good riddance. The first few weeks were brutal. Half the staff didn't know what to believe. Some tiptoed around me like I might explode. Others treated me like I'd burned down their church. I stayed steady. I cleaned house. Quietly, methodically. Those loyal to the old regime adjusted or moved on. I rewrote the company's mission statement. Transparency, integrity, growth. Real growth. Not the hollow empire Marjorie had built on lies. One late night, sitting in the CEO's office, formerly Marjorie's shrine to herself, I pulled out a yellow legal pad and scribbled a name. The New Roots Scholarship Fund. It felt right. Not revenge, renewal. I funneled part of the settlement money into it, setting up grants for kids who had been failed by their families but refused to give up. Kids like me. I named the scholarship after my grandmother, Rose Reeves, the only real warmth I ever knew from the Hayes bloodline. She used to braid my hair and hum gospel songs telling me, "Baby, roots run deep even when the tree looks dead." The local newspaper picked up the story. Suddenly, I wasn't just the estranged daughter anymore. I was a businesswoman rebuilding something that had rotted from the inside, and doing it with purpose. Spring blurred into summer. Charlotte's air turned heavy with honeysuckle and second chances. One Saturday, loading groceries into my car, I saw her, Marjorie, standing by the store's sliding doors, clutching a plastic bag, looking smaller. Faded. She approached, tentative. "Kalila," she said, voice cracking. "Maybe, someday you'll forgive me." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. "Forgiveness is for the future," I said evenly, "and my future doesn't include you." She turned and walked away, shoulders hunched under a too bright sun. I watched her go, no regret. A week later, I sat in the county clerk's office, finalizing paperwork to sever the last visible tie. When they handed me the form, I signed without hesitation. Kalila Reeves. No more chains, no more stolen names. Just me, strong, scarred, and standing on my own. Some battles don't leave marks on your skin. They carve new paths into your soul. And sometimes, those paths lead exactly where you were always meant to go. As I look back on everything that happened, one truth stands taller than the rest. Family is not defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty, respect, and love. Sometimes, the people we are born into aren't the people we are meant to keep. And standing up for yourself, even against your own blood, isn't selfish. It's survival. It's strength. You are not obligated to stay small just to make others feel comfortable. If my story teaches anything, I hope it's this. You have every right to build a life that honors your dignity, your dreams, and your peace, even if that means walking alone for a while. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means learning, and using that wisdom to build something better. Because you too deserve a legacy you're proud of, not one you're trapped inside of. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to make the painful choice to walk away from someone you loved? What would you have done in my place? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know your story. And hey, if this video touched your heart, leave a or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't quite resonate with you, that's okay too. Tell me why and where you're tuning in from. Your voice matters here. If you found any part of this journey powerful, inspiring, or real, please hit that subscribe button. Stick around. More stories are on the way. Let's keep building a space where truth, healing, and courage always have a home.